Good morning. It's been a morning of technical challenges, and I'm hoping my hover cam is working now. It seems to be. I'm not sure why it got frozen up there, but we seem to be back online. So in the first 6-minute video, I talked about what this year has been like for me, and the year that I'm starting with. My hover cam, my hubby's here to check in on me. My hover cam froze up, and so I just restarted, unplugged it and plugged it in. It seems to be working fine now. So, yep. So, this is live. This is what it looks like to be live. Not everything works all the time. And it's hilarious because I was just talking, and you can see that in the first snippet of the video that, it's been a topsy-turvy year, plus we moved to the mountains this year, to this beautiful place that I love in Loveland, Colorado. We're only 45 minutes from Rocky Mountain National Park and from my mom. So it's been a topsy-turvy year, right? And it's been kind of like that flowing river. And I love in my visual journaling to include visual elements, to include words and writing. Some mornings I can sit and write for a long time, and sometimes I find that images and colors come to me a lot more easily than words do. And when you're thinking about something like my cats have decided it's time to fight. You can probably hear them in the background. And when it comes to a question of reflecting back and thinking about what has 22 been like for me, like there's thoughts, there's feelings, right? Like if we think about all of this, there's the thoughts that I have, there's the feelings, there's a lot of action. So moving cross country has been really something quite interesting. I've taken a lot of action in my business. I've taken a lot of action in my personal life, and those actions have been complicated. We have experienced a lot of decision fatigue, like when it came to trying to pick the paint color for our upstairs of our home. We found the color that we loved, and then they said that color wouldn't do what we needed it to. And it's just those little things that can be challenging. But through it all, there's been a lot of beauty and magic, a lot of miracles, and a lot of things that really went right. And it would be easy to stay really stuck down here in some of the despair and the doubt and the fear and the worry and the anxiety. There was a lot of that as well. But there was so much to celebrate. And tomorrow we're going to talk about celebrating. But today I really wanted to just take some time and capture exactly what that looks like and felt like, and what were some of the thoughts and feelings underneath everything. One thing that I can definitely say, and I'm curious about this paper, so that Sharpie does kind of bleed through there, which is totally fine. But one thing I can say about this year is that it took a lot of faith, and it took a lot of staying in forward motion, and a lot of things went right. And it's so easy for so many of us to stay stuck in despair, doubt, disappointment, failure, what didn't go wrong. But that's not how I roll, right? Like, I go there, but I've learned that I can't stay there and continue to function in the world. And so I've learned to really look at my thoughts and my feelings and understand where and what kind of actions I can take to get me, going again in the right directions. So it's been a really interesting year. And so I don't know where I'm going to go with this page creatively, other that maybe you have seen a lot of people sharing these funny images online lately from the app. The app is Lensa, Lensai, or Lensa.ai, I think it is, Lensa.ai. Well, you can hardly read that. I'm going to cut this up, that's why I'm writing on it. Lensa.ai, and it's an app, and it takes photos of you and changes them into these different kinds of avatars. And so I was playing with this app yesterday, and when I was thinking about it this morning, I've been working a lot with self-portraits lately as just a way of being in that deeper reflection, deeper connection to self, deeper loving and acceptance of self. And I thought these avatars really kind of captured some of the interesting topsy-turvy, right? Like there's that kind of worried, little bit fearful, she's looking just determined to move forward. There's that sort of fragmented look, and I didn't do any of these intentionally, but this is how I work with collage, right? Is I love flipping through collage images, and I love the fierce warrior Minette in this one. So it was a lot of fun, and so I thought, how can I capture all of these aspects of self and all of those thoughts and feelings that were present for me throughout this year. So I'm going to start with some gesso over the top of this page. Reorganize myself here. I had brought over my giant box of collage images, but then I decided to work more with these self-portraits. So I'm going to come in here, not with matte medium, that would work too. And I'm going to put a thin layer of gesso because I'm working on these fairly thin pages. The texture is pretty nice, but I want to just have a little more tooth to those pages, and I want to cover up a little bit those words, right? These words are just for me. Just putting some paper under there, protect the front of that book. So I really want to just, I don't need to cover everything up. The gesso just, especially if you're working on thinner pages, then you can add a little bit more wet media to your pages. And again, it just gives that little bit of coverage. I can still see some of the words. And by the time I'm done with this, I'm not really going to be able to see much of this. You might just see some of the marks. But there's something for me about combining my own writing and creating on top of that just adds more meaning to my visual journaling pages. It helps me sort of settle into what it is that I want to work on. I don't always start with writing, but there's times, especially when I'm doing this kind of deep inner reflective work, which is my favorite work to do, then it always feels important to pause to just sort of check in and see, where am I in the moment? This, by the way, is a catalyst wedge, one of my absolutely favorite tools. I do whole pages and spreads only using that wedge. It's pretty dry down here, so this is going to dry pretty fast. But for me, I love visual journaling processes that allow me to connect with myself in a different way. I love all kinds of art. I love making things that are pretty, and I love making things that are useful and practical, like journals. But much of my work is about, even when I'm painting on large canvases, is a more intuitive approach to who am I and how am I showing up in the world. And as we go into this end of year reflection for 2022, and I'm looking back and thinking about where I've been, I want to pull the threads and the pieces of where I've been out so that I can also have a better sense of what seeds am I planting and where am I going for the coming year. So interestingly, these all kind of have a very similar palette. like all the colors that I just intuitively picked palettes. They're all different art styles, but they're all in kind of these blues and reds and a little bit of pinks and definitely some black and white. So I'm going to kind of go with this inspiration from these portraits as my palette. And I picked up my rag. I'm like, why is my rag all wet? And I think my jar of water, when I moved it over here, must have been leaking a little bit. So I'm a little behind this morning in getting myself set up and ready to play because I came down here and somehow the switch had been flipped and I had to get Brad to restart everything. So it's just kind of been one of those mornings. All right. Here's a nice crimson red. And I've been loving this brilliant blue, and I know together, right, I've got a cool color and a warm color, and those are going to make some purple, which I'm not sure I want that purple in there. So let me just start with a little bit of this red. And I'm just trying to get a little color down on the page. I can spend hours and hours on a page, but we don't always have that much time. So I also like pages, and this page is all crumpled and has some fun texture on it, which I'm loving. But I also like pages that come together quickly and don't take all of our time. And I'm working on top of a piece of newsprint because it makes great under paper and collage fodder for later. So I will use all the paper that I get painty, which helps me not put so much paint into our water systems either. That white's still a little bit wet, so I'm getting a little bit of that white in there. And again, I'm just putting paint down. I'm really not thinking about this at all. And you can see a little bit of those marks are still showing through, but not a lot. Use that wedge to maybe just scratch through there and maybe make a little marks. The paint's drying so fast. It's great for spreading. It's not as great for mark making because it has a soft, flexible edge, and I definitely like something a little stiffer to come through and make some more interesting marks. So I just keep playing with the page, building up from here. Good morning, Jill. Fun to see you here. And I saw this morning you registered for the Radiant Retreat. I'm so excited that you are coming to play this weekend. Looking forward to seeing you live on Zoom too. And Jill, how has this year, the theme we're working with this morning is what has 2022 been like for you? So I'm curious if you're open to sharing what has the year been like for you. And you're an even earlier bird than I am because you're on the West Coast and it's super early your time. Thank you. I'm glad you loved it. It's going to be a little bit different this year. I'm super excited about some of the changes that we're making. So I'm just feeling like needs to just be a simple page that still kind of captures a little bit of that drama that I was feeling this year. So I'm going to come in just with some black and a brush and maybe just start to add some marks. Again, these are under layers, right? I'm going to add collage on top of these. I may have to go grab my dryer so I can move this along a little faster. I love playing with different types of paintbrushes, and it would be really easy to just cover this whole page with these little black marks because they're so fun to make, and there's something soothing for me about dots and making dots. And I love playing with different sizes of paintbrushes, but this is definitely a favorite. It's not a fancy brush, but I do really love flat brushes more than round brushes, and so this is a little tiny flat brush, which is great for making detail. And whenever I'm putting patterns down on a page, I want to have that same pattern show up in a few different places. It ultimately creates more coherence and symmetry in my page. And you notice I've also created different patches of color and different sizes of marks. I've got some bigger marks, some smaller marks. I might add even some lines in here. Something about the drama of the black that really, again, it speaks to the topsy-turviness of the last year. And I always forget every time I move, and even though we 100% chose to sell our house and move to Colorado, there's always a 6-month period of grieving and really taking time to settle and put down new roots, right? Taking time to settle and put down new roots. So I'm past that 6-month mark, and I'm definitely starting to feel more settled, more at home in my own studio, which it just took a while, right? Before I really got back into my habit that was really well established in California of showing up in my studio every morning. Oh, I love that, Jill. Yep, up early. Yes, me too. I love the inspiration to do some journaling and the art. It's why I love prompts, right? Prompts can really support us quite a bit. All right, so while that's drying, I'm going to push that out of the way, and I'm going to work on trimming up some of these. Hey, PJ, great to see you. My Texas friend, that was another big move for us when we moved from Texas to California. All my early birds are here. So PJ, thanks for joining us. The first prompt that we started with was, what was 22 like for you? What has 2022 been like for you? In fact, I'm going to add that back into the comments. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome, welcome. Got my East Coast friends, West Coast friends, and my Texas friends all in the house. So the question I'm thinking about today is, what has 2022 been like for you? And I had some technical difficulties as I was getting started, and so there was another video where I really showed what I was journaling about, but I was saying it's been a really topsy-turvy year, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ins and outs, a lot of great things have happened, and a lot of really challenging things have happened. So I wanted to create a spread. I did some journaling on the page first with a Sharpie, and I wanted to create a spread that would really capture like all the ups and downs and ins and outs. Oh, you were here and just saw the chat. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. I love it. So it's all still a new system to me. I'm still figuring it out, but I'm glad everybody's finding the chat. And I have these fun pictures created by AI. I saw everybody was doing these, and I thought, okay, I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here a little bit. And I'm probably not patient enough to cut out all those little details. Good morning, Mom. Great to see you here too. You're up early this morning. I knew I could at least count on my mom to come and join me live a couple of times. But happy to see you all here. So the app that I used, Jill, was Lensa.ai, and you upload different selfies, pictures of yourself, and then it generates them in fantasy style like this one, and pop style, and there was kind of a more realistic style, and I'd seen a bunch of people on social this over the weekend playing with them. And you get a 1 week free trial for the app. I did have to pay for the avatar part of it. It was $4 for 50 different pictures, and they were pretty fun. So a lot of different styles, and I think they really capture sort of all the different phases of where I'd been. I didn't do it with the intention of using them this morning, but I thought, oh, this will be perfect. And as I'm working in this end of year reflections journal over the rest of the month, I want to use a lot of self-portraits, right? To think about what I'm doing. And it's really kind of brilliant, like where artificial intelligence is going. It's a little bit daunting, but it's also really fascinating. While I was playing with these avatars, my husband put, yeah, Mom, I'll type that in here in the chat. Lensa.ai, and it's an app on your phone, And my husband found one that was going around on Twitter that was answering questions and giving really pretty amazing answers to questions, which sparks a lot of debate about how will kids use them in school, what will happen. Kind of like those little birdies there too, so hold on to those little birdies. And so it's an interesting debate, right? And in the art and creative communities, there's a really interesting debate about, and has been for a long time now, about digital art, and is digital art real art? And I think absolutely it is. To me, it combines so many different creative skills. I really loved this crazy image that they came up with because it shows that fragmentation of what it felt like to sell a house in California, to be without a house for a while, and we were living with my mom and my stepdad. Thank you so much. We had us and the cats. It was so generous of them while we were getting everything in order and buying a house in Loveland, and then getting, a new house ready to move into, and moving and getting settled. Moving is never easy, right? Moving is never easy. And my personal life was in turmoil for a while because of that, and the whole world was in turmoil. So, we started the year thinking it was going one way, and it maybe didn't go the way that we thought it would. But I love how these portraits feel like they're reflecting different aspects of who I am. But I'm curious if you had one or two words to kind of sum up what this year has been like for you. What has it been like for you? What has 22 been like for you? So if I had to use one word, my word was topsy-turvy. Lots to celebrate, and there have been a lot of challenges as well. But if you had one word, I'd love to hear that in the chat. Or 2 words or 5 words. All right. So now I got to start to think about what am I going to do with these portraits? How do I want to show them? Right now they're way too much the same color here. Oops, I'm stuck to something. Got my book in that red paint, no problem. So I want to think about how do I want to showcase these different aspects of self and what happened. but I'd love to hear from others. What's a word of the year? Or several words that kind of capture where you have been this year. And I'm going to go grab my dryer. I will be right back because I can't keep going on this page till it's dry, and I forgot to grab it. So my art studio is on the other side of the room. And I tend to work very intuitively anyway, so I don't always end up having all the things that I need over here, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But it all works, but now we have a dryer, we're plugged in. Get untangled. PJ says, I love topsy-turvy. I started out one way and mid-year things went sideways. Flexibility, yes, flexibility is so helpful to keep us grounded and sane. So this is going to be noisy for just a second while I dry myself. And I'm going to come back in with that gesso and add another layer of white right over the top just to kind of calm all this down again. And if it's not all completely dry, that's all right. Some of those colors start to mix in. We'll just go with it. It's one of the things I love about this kind of intuitive journaling. It makes me think about happy accidents, right? Happy accidents. So this page was definitely a little more wet over here. Anybody else want to share how this year was for them? What has 22 been like? Maybe it was an amazing year for you and everything went perfectly. So tomorrow we're going to talk about making sure that we're celebrating the year as well. It's easy to look back and get caught up in all the things that didn't quite go like we wanted them to. But I find if I look for them, there's always something to celebrate. There's always something to celebrate. All right, I'm going to hit this one more time with the dryer. And it's interesting because these pages are looking a little dark and grungy, which is maybe how these images we're kind of thinking about. I love this one in particular, I like that sort of fierce focus, like all these different things. But there's been a lot of light this year, so I'm thinking I want to come in and add some light in here. And I'm going to use this cadmium yellow medium, which is pretty transparent, right? So I'm still going to be able to see a lot of the marks and little bits of those colors peeking through, but it's going to just brighten up the whole page. So it's kind of funny that as I'm working on this end of year reflection, And my textures on my pages are different because this page had no collage, but the back of this page had quite a bit of collage on it. So it's creating different textures on the page. So I'm loving the one that has the collage and how I'm getting those different textures. But again, it's like this idea of also looking for the threads and the through lines, right? Looking for the threads and the through lines of, you know, what did work this year? What do I want to keep doing? And these are some of the questions we'll look at throughout the month but we can start as we're looking back. You know, it's like, what has it been like? And when we can see really what it's been like, it helps us to make different decisions about what we want more of, what we want to keep, and what we want to let go of as well. So I'm totally creating on the fly. I did not plan any of this out in advance other than to decide that I wanted to use those pictures and to print them out, but I had no idea what I was going to do with them. So you can see me creating on the fly with, you know, it takes some thoughtfulness and some decision making. It's not always kind of like life, like I'm just going to make a decision and go for it, right? Sometimes we have to make a big fat mess first to get to where it is that we want to go. Hi, honey. I got my mom and my hubby here. Thank you both. And I had mentioned that Jill had signed up for my Radiant Retreat. It is not too late to sign up to join me. I have one session coming on this Saturday, the 10th of December, and another one on Sunday, January 8th, where we'll be going even deeper into looking at what we want to create to have a really magical and radiant year. I love the word radiant. It's how I want to feel. And I didn't pick out this particular image, but there was some fairy images on here that were really fun as well, and I'm thinking I'm gonna want to do a spread. This one, like, it didn't look like me at all. I preferred the ones where they, like, this looks like me maybe when I was in high school, but they're so fun. So I can see that a lot of these are going to show up in my collage work in some different ways, right? Aren't they? So they're super, super interesting. And I really love how they came out. So many different versions. You can see all the different styles that they use. It's a fascinating process to go through and look at yourself through these different lenses that I think really opens up some inspiring conversations. All right, so I want to start. I feel like this is kind of where I am, and maybe I can show some of the journey. You know, maybe there was some of that confusion and fragmentation. There has definitely been a what the F is happening, right? It's taken some fierce focus and action, but now I feel pretty solid and grounded. So I love how these just different portraits are showing different things that are going on in my life right now. And so am I ready to glue these down? I'm sort of debating here where I want to go next. I still feel like that background could be even a little bit brighter as I'm going through, but at least I know where I'm going with my images. I know where I'm going with my images. I kind of have an idea. And I'm gonna grab some, maybe titanium white instead of gesso. So again, it's a little more transparent, not quite as opaque as the gesso. And I'm working in a small space, so it's like everything's right in front of me and I feel like I keep losing things. And I love just building up the layers this way until I get it to be the color, the texture. I don't need to cover it all up, and this is where a lot of times I like to even come in. Maybe I want to push that back even a little bit. There's something about just putting white over the top of things, and normally I would do this with baby wipes, but they're on the other side of the room, that it just kind of pulls the whole page together, right? So I'm still seeing the lines and the shapes and some of those marks, and I'll probably bring some of those marks back in the later layers as well. Good morning, Blanca. Great to see you. Top of the morning to you. So our theme this morning is, what has 2022 been like for you? So I did some journaling and some reflecting and sort of looking back at what has this year really been like. And the word I came up with, if I had to sum it up in one word, was topsy-turvy. So if you have any thoughts on what has this last year been like for you, we'd love to hear those in the chat as well. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for the follow on Instagram. Super appreciate that as well. And I am creating live, so you get to see all the mistakes, the mess, the way I think through it, and listen to me dry the pages. So I'm working with these fun portraits created by AI. I'm looking for, there it is, my matte medium that I thought really kind of captured all the different places, feelings, thoughts, points of my topsy-turvy year. Ultimately, it's been an amazing year. We love where we're living now. But these portraits, these crazy portraits, kind of capture all those different aspects. And the page is going to be a little shiny here for a bit, maybe a little bit hard to see. It's hard to get away from the shine. So I'm just using a palette knife and some matte medium to cover those images and protect them, getting them as smooth as I can on the page. They're getting a little bit of paint on them as well. It's totally fine. Come in with the catalyst wedge and just really smooth those out. And I love painting and drawing over the top of matte medium. It creates a really, really nice surface that you can continue to work on top of. And if you're creating or writing along with me, I'd love to hear what you're working on this morning. You can share it on Instagram and tag Painting in Your PJs with Minette, and then I will see it, or you can tag me. I'm at Dr. Minette Riordan on Instagram and Facebook. Pretty darn easy to find. I remember one time my aunt was trying to find my phone number and couldn't find it, and so she did an online search and found my phone number and called me, and she says, wow, you're really easy to find online. And I said, well, that's a good thing. I want to be easy to find. People often ask me what my doctorate is in. I have a PhD from Stanford University in Spanish, and specifically in Latin American literature and poetry. I thought I was going to be a college professor But, you know, life always takes you on the journey it takes you on, and I became a very happy entrepreneur instead. I've owned my own businesses. This is probably the third or fourth iteration of my business that I've owned. I had a publishing company, had a parenting magazine for a long time, but I've been in the coaching and creative industries for the last decade, and I feel more aligned and on purpose in my work than I ever have before. And it's definitely taken a while to get here. So if you find yourself caught in that place of having maybe lost sight a little bit of what your personal mission is or what your purpose is, these questions are going to help get you back to just a place of understanding like who you are. When we reflect back on where we've been, it can really help us look ahead to where we're going. And I'm loving these images. Help us look ahead to where we're going. So I definitely want this to get nice and dry, but I'm going to come in with a little bit more color. Bring some of those blues back. And it's not about looking back and thinking about all the bad things that happened. It's about looking back and saying, this is what worked me. This is what moved me. This is what was my biggest teacher this year. These are the things that took me longer than I thought, but once they came to fruition, it was exactly what I wanted. Like, there's so many questions we can ask ourselves to reconnect to who we are at the core of our being. And I find that creative expression and combining art and writing is one of the best and most powerful ways to do that. All right, really loving that turquoise blue on there. So I think I'm going to keep going with that. I love painting with my fingers. It really helps get that paint on there. And again, I tend to work with a lot of really transparent layers. I don't want to completely bury and cover up everything underneath. I want to be able to still see some little hints of what came before, right? Like, one of my favorite words or concepts in the English language is a palimpsest. The Rosetta Stone is a palimpsest, and the concept of a palimpsest is, it used to be before they made paper and they would write on parchment, or a Rosetta Stone was actually on stone, and they would scrape away on, papyrus or leather, whatever it was that they were writing on. And it wasn't a easy practice to completely get rid of what was there before. So the old writing and the new writing would combine, and there would be new meaning that was created by these layers. And that's how I feel about the visual journaling process. We're creating a palimpsest of layers where each of the layers before adds meaning and depth and richness and details to what we're seeing here on the page. So I'm pretty happy with where this page is going. Like, it's hard to believe that, I started with some big, just Sharpie marks on the page. And what I love about matte medium is if I do something like drip some water on here and I didn't want to, I can just pretty easily pull that back off and without destroying that collage image underneath. So that matte medium creates this really nice protective layer. All right, time to bring some of the red back. You notice I'm still working with the same primary colors. Just going to bring a little bit of that back. Just, again, I've used, a brush once, just a little bit, but mostly I've used this Catalyst wedge and my fingers. And I'm just, again, repeating those marks around the page. I'm thinking that I want to have some nice space on here for adding in some journaling. So I'm probably going to come in and do some writing about each of these portraits on here, and it's going to have to be super, super dry for me to do that. Like really dry, because I can't tell you how many of my favorite pens I've ruined the tips of because I didn't wait long enough for that page to dry. But I feel like I've gotten a really good start on the page this morning. So I've been going about an hour, so you can see about how long these spreads take. And I tend to work on them across a couple of different days, right? I think sometimes we think it's one of our biggest challenges is in finding and making time to create is this belief that we have to sit down and do it all in one session. And really, this is a page that could take several days that I could have a lot of fun working with over multiple days and not feeling like it needs to be finished. And I love having lots of pages in my journal started. Come in here and add some of this black back in. Having pages in my journal started so that when I do sit down to work and I only have a few minutes, that I can just add more to a page. Or I love having a blank page and just adding some background colors, right? So it's nice to just come in and spend 15 minutes at a time. But I also love, love, love the luxury of time and how in an hour I can get a lot done and still not be done. Those dots look like moons. I love it. They do look like, and then we're talking about phases, right? So we've got all the phases of the moon, and it is, what's the date today? It is December 5th. We're coming up on the full moon here in a few days, if you pay attention to those kind of things. And I love that you said that about the moons, because now I'm probably going to come back in with some white, with a white Posca, and add some highlights on here when this is done. Bye, Jill. Great to see you. I'll see you tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about what can we celebrate. What can we celebrate? Have a great day, Jill. Thanks for joining me. So I am going to go let this dry completely, and I will finish it up a later time, and I'll show the finished page on social and tomorrow morning. But I can tell you that the last thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some journaling boxes. I have a beautiful stencil from Megan Quislin that I love that has the little shapes for journaling. I think I'm going to add that on here and do some journaling. And I will put a picture of that stencil on my Instagram as well. My Instagram is at Dr. Minette Riordan, at Dr. Minette Riordan. So you'll be able to see that there. But I think for now it's done. Like I get to a point where I'm feeling that it needs to just sit. Like if I keep going, I feel like I'm rushing it. And so people will often ask me, how do I know when a piece is done? And I think you just know, but I also think more than asking yourself, is it done? You can ask, is it done for now? Is it done for now? And give yourself permission to walk away. We can, get really energized and inspired and want to keep going. And I found that when I push and I try to just keep going, it ends up getting muddy. And I just end up messing things up and getting annoyed. So I think it's really, really valuable to step away from pieces and look at them with fresh eyes. But in this case, I can tell you it just needs to dry. I've got a lot of layers of paint. You can see it's still shiny from where the paint's not quite dry, and probably the matte medium layer underneath isn't quite dry. And I feel good now, right? And I started with journaling, and I'm gonna end with journaling as well to kind of bring it all home together. So thank you so much for joining me live today. Again, this is Painting in Your PJs with Minette, and throughout the month of December, now I can see it a lot better too, getting those pages out of there. Throughout the month of December, I think I gotta bring these funny little birdies back at some point too. I will be working on 22 of my favorite end of year reflection questions, really taking my time. Bye, Jennifer. Have a great day. Taking my time this year answering those questions. I'm going to put this little silly guy on there. And working in this end of year reflections journal, which I showed how to create in one of my lives last week, and you can see the recording. Also created this cover page using one of my son Connor's designs from our Mindful Patterns program. And this is day one. What has 2022 been like? So thanks everyone. I will be right back here tomorrow morning, Tuesday, December 6th at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. Have an amazing rest of your day, and thanks for joining me.